I've been getting interviews scheduled for clients to go before USCIS for their green card applications and also their naturalization applications. Um, it's getting to the point where we're getting a lot of interviews being scheduled on the same day. Sometimes in the same immigration office, sometimes in a different immigration office. And I think it's only gonna ramp up as immigration really moves towards a mandatory interview requirement. I think that's where we're headed. So that's going to be an issue for a lot of immigration lawyers like myself who are solos or small firm practitioners. What happens if you get multiple interviews scheduled on the same day? It's not necessarily easy to, first of all, cover all these interviews. Um, and then secondly, to request a reschedule from immigration, that's going to take time, right? Sometimes these interview notices get sent to you in the mail a little late, right? So if you don't have a lot of time and you have to make the request immigration, then, there's a timeliness issue. What if they don't receive your request for a new date and time, and then they can potentially deny the application saying that you never showed up, you failed to appear. I mean, immigration has been doing that anyway, even where you actually showed up. This happened to me recently, one for an asylum interview and one for a green card interview. For the asylum interview, I went with my client, and the interview itself was 4 hours long. At the end of it, the officer even gave us a piece of paper saying to my client to come back in 2 weeks to pick up the decision. Um, but then after we attended the asylum interview, we then got another letter from the asylum office saying, according to our records, you didn't show up to your interview. So I don't know what's going on with immigration. I don't know how they can get such basic information mixed up. Um, it's a little concerning because what I'm seeing is people's cases are being denied when they've done no wrong, when they've showed up, when they've attended the interview, and they have proof of that. So it's just a lot of confusion and chaos with USCIS right now. The other green card interview, very similar thing. I went with my client. We were seen by the officer, taken to that officer's room. The issue with that case was that my client's spouse could not take a day off from work. Her employer would not let her um, attend the interview, and we went in explaining that to the officer. And then the officer even gave us a paper confirming we were there and basically told us verbally, okay, we will note for the record that your spouse could not show up, and then we will be rescheduling you for your adjustment interview. And then I decided to check on the status by going to immigration's website and entering the receipt number for the adjustment, and was shocked to see that according to immigration, no one bothered to show up. So I don't know how that could happen if I have a piece of paper from the officer saying we were there, and that the case is being held for review. Obviously, a real problem, and I don't know how widespread it is, but this happened to me in the last 3 weeks. So it's not like a one-off. I think it's a lot of cases just get like slip into the cracks or they fall into some black hole just because immigration isn't really paying attention. Um, so just to know that, if you're scheduled for an appointment, make sure you attend. And even after that, immigration can still make mistakes and say that you never showed up for your interview. So, a lot of my time now is spent not only going with my clients to their interviews, but also preparing them extensively. This is something that you should really be doing if you are expecting to be scheduled for an interview. So just some general tips. If you don't have a lawyer, you didn't hire a lawyer to file your application, strongly consider hiring an attorney to prep you and go with you to the interview. Um, there are some rumors, maybe more than just rumors, that if someone is applying for the green card and they are not currently in status, let's say they overstayed their visa or maybe their ESTA. I've heard a few stories, anecdotally from other lawyers that ICE was there to pick up the client and detain them. Um, so again, really concerning because under the law, if someone is applying for adjustment of status and they are an immediate relative, meaning they are the parent, the spouse, or a child under the age of 21 of a US citizen petitioner, they're eligible to adjust status even if they overstay their visa or their ESTA. Um, that is not a bar to adjusting status to permanent residence. So I think what's happening is that because the Trump administration and Stephen Miller has pretty much ordered ICE agents to round up individuals and detain and deport. Um, the latest number is 3,000 per day is the target that Stephen Miller directed. That's what's happening, is that you go for the low-hanging fruit, the easiest people to pick on, right? Just like get people who are showing up for their green card interview or their naturalization interview, um, so that they can meet their numbers. So that's one major reason why you should have an attorney with you, even if you think you have a straightforward case. Um, in terms of how to prepare for your interview, I mean, you should really prepare extensively. I mean, every case is different. Some cases are less complicated, but you don't really know the extent to which immigration could be questioning your immigration history. And this is especially true if you're applying for naturalization. A lot of clients have this misconception that, oh, all I need to do is wait the required period of time that I've had the green card, and then I can just automatically apply for citizenship and have it approved. When someone's applying for naturalization, immigration can really go into that person's entire immigration history, even though technically they're only supposed to go into either the 3 or 5 year statutory period. Um, in my experience, they can dig further, right? Especially if there's anything like irregular about immigration history, if they're looking out for any possible fraud issues in the past. They're looking to see if maybe they mistakenly granted someone a green card. Like, let's say they didn't know that someone had a criminal issue because it wasn't disclosed. And it does happen. Immigration does make mistakes, as you can see. And there have been times when they granted someone adjustment and didn't have all the facts at hand, or maybe they misapplied the law, right? So it could be an error of fact, or it could be an error of law. And they may not know that they incorrectly granted someone a green card. But because that person then stepped forward to apply for naturalization, then all of a sudden you're on immigration's radar. And yes, at that point, that's when they discover a lot of their mistakes. So don't just assume that naturalization is straightforward and all you need to do is have the green card for X period of time and then pass the civics exam and the English exam. It's way more extensive than that. Um, and that's why I go with all of my clients through their interviews. Sometimes the cases that you think are the most straightforward end up being the ones that don't necessarily pass with flying colors at the interview. Um, you don't know the immigration officer that you're going to get, right? For the most part, I think USCIS officers are regular people. They're just going about their day, trying to do their job. But yeah, there are a few bad apples here and there. Um, and if you get one of these difficult officers, then you want to have an attorney there who can monitor the interview. That's how I view my role when I go with my clients to their interviews. I generally am there to kind of be a watchdog and make sure that the questions that the officer asks my clients are relevant questions and that the officer isn't misinterpreting what my client says or trying to put words into my client's mouths, right? That does happen, unfortunately, from time to time. Um, Other tips, dress appropriately, right? Dress business casual or professional. You want to convey to the officer that you're taking this interview very seriously. Look at the interview notice, and especially for adjustment interviews, there is a bulleted list of documents that they instruct you to bring. I always tell my clients to bring originals of all their biographic documents. So passports, even expired ones, birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce certificates. Those always you should have in the original because the officer will want to look at it and inspect it and make sure the document is authentic and hasn't been tampered with, and that the copy that they have in their file that you submitted to immigration when you filed the application for adjustment or naturalization, they're going to compare that the copy that they have is a true copy of the original document, not, you know, um, not altered in any way. Um, a long time ago, I had a client who came to me because he went to his adjustment interview, and the only thing that was missing is that he left his original birth certificate at home. And he had the bad luck of picking an officer who said, well, you're required to, you were put on notice. The interview notice specifically says to bring these original documents. And because you didn't, you failed to comply with our request, and therefore the officer denied his green card application for that alone. So he ended up having to hire me to refile the entire green card application again. That means preparing all the forms again, the immigration forms, paying all the immigration fees again, getting another medical exam, and sent, like basically had to do everything all over, which was could have been avoided if he knew how important it was to have all original documents at the interview. Other general tips, listen very carefully to the officer and what they are asking you. So in my prep sessions with my clients, what I'm noticing is that a lot of clients are understandably very nervous about the process. They've never gone through this before. So one tendency is to just like not really listen to the question that's being asked and then to say something completely different. So listen to who, what, when, where, why questions. If I'm asking my client, when did you meet your spouse? Sometimes I'll get a totally different answer. Like they'll tell me where they met, not when. So listening is very important because generally speaking, you want to limit your answers only to what the officer is asking you. The more details you give the officer that they didn't ask for, the more that gives them leeway to go on a fishing expedition and then go off in tangents. And then before you know it, if it's an officer who's looking for some reason to not approve your case, then they have all this ammunition, right? So I have to literally train my clients to not say more than they need to. And that's, I understand, a very kind of nervous reaction for some people is they just will, they're not comfortable with silence. So they feel like to fill that gap, they have to just keep talking. Don't do that. It never ends well. Um, Another thing is don't cut off the officer and answer the question before they're finished with their question. No one likes being cut off, right? Even if you think you know what they're asking, you they may be going in a completely different direction. So um, be patient and be polite and let them finish their question before you answer it. Um, Other things, If they ask you a question that you don't really understand, ask them to repeat it or rephrase it. So if they ask you a question that contains words, terminology that you don't understand, ask them to explain what it means. Not everyone knows what espionage means, or polygamy, or insurgent organization, right? These are not everyday words. So, because these are immigration forms, there's a lot of legal words that you may not ever have heard of, or you're not really sure what that means. You may think you know what a word means, but if you're not 100% sure, don't answer it, right? Because everything that you say at these interviews, they're considered to be um, sworn testimony, right? That's the first thing that the officer does when they take you into the office. Before you even sit down, they will swear you in, you and your spouse, if it's an adjustment interview. So anything you say, they can always use against you and say, well, you stated under penalty of perjury. And because of this, then they can use that as a basis to find that you lied, concealed something, misrepresented something. And even if you were eligible for naturalization or adjustment, they can just use that as a reason to not approve you and say, well, you were not honest with us. So why should we grant your green card or your citizenship? Um, so those are the tips, the top tips that I always tell my clients. Um, Don't be late. That's another thing. Here in New York and New Jersey, where I go with most of my clients to their interviews, sometimes the wait to get into the building is very long. You know, there are federal buildings. New York and Newark are huge immigration offices. Plus, in those federal buildings, it's not just USCIS. There could be any number of other federal government agencies. So on certain days, there could be a lot of people trying to get into the building. And in Federal Plaza here in Manhattan, there usually is only two working um, security machines. So if there are 100 people waiting, guess how long it's going to take if they only have two, machines to go through and everyone has to take off their shoes. It's kind of like being at the airport. So you want to get there ahead of time. Don't be late. Um, Also, there's going to be a waiting period. Just because they schedule you for 8:30 in the morning doesn't mean they'll see you at 8:30. Um, it really does depend on how many interviews they have scheduled that day, how many officers are working that day. If they're short-staffed, then guess what? You're going to end up waiting quite a while. Um, so those are just some general tips. And if you don't have an attorney, I highly recommend, just to reemphasize my earlier point, have an attorney prepare you for the interview and represent you at the actual interview as well.